It's not TV, it's HBO.
It's not TV, it's HBO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. No.
Hi, this is Penn Gillette, Penn and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me. He does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. I want to talk about Joseph Jaffe is not famous. And Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Joseph Jaffe is wicked not famous. Joseph Jaffe is superlatively not famous, and for good and sufficient reason. I mean, maybe his guests are famous. Maybe his guests are famous. He gets some famous people on his guests, but Joseph Jaffe himself is not famous. That's the important part. You can have famous guests and still not be famous. And if you want an example of that, well, Joseph Jaffe would be a really good example. Teller would do a better job at a talk show, and Teller doesn't talk, which you'd think would be one of the major qualifications of being on a talk show and not being famous. What's that, Teller? Oh, yeah, Teller says, Joseph Jaffe, not famous. Love you. Peace.
We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's Afterparty, so it's now we go with the Flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
What a great organization and a show that offers hope, optimism, creative solutions, entertainment.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph. It's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Look, I think somebody didn't pay the cable and Wi-Fi bill, and this guy, I'm gonna have to check. Things were sticking a little bit. You know, and that's the whole goal, right? As marketers, you know, we're meant to make things to stick. We want things to be sticky. Today, it looks like my little fat fingers hitting the mouse were a little bit sticky. So things did not roll as smoothly as one would have liked. But you know what? It's all about response and responsiveness. It's all about time. It's all about reaction speed. And today we're going to talk about feeling the need for a little bit of Jay Baer. And maybe, you know, depending on when you watch this, maybe a little bit of that beautiful agave glass, that agave cup holder with a bit of tequila. Look, we're going to catch up, Jay and myself. We're going to talk about his new book. We're going to talk about tequila. We're going to talk about publishing books. We're going to talk about whatever the hell he wants to talk about. And, you know, we were in the green room earlier, and, you know, we hadn't seen each other probably since the last time he was on the show. And I said, well, you know, even though we haven't seen each other IRL, I get to see you every now and then because you're a part of the intro that you just saw. So I don't feel as lonely or disconnected from Jay, but we're going to do it in person shortly, and I cannot wait. If you haven't subscribed to the show, and by my last count, that would be 7.9999999 billion of you, what are you waiting for? Just go to bit.ly/subscribe to the show and make sure that you never miss a single episode. And look, we've had some amazing episodes lately. Patrick Fabian, who played Howard Hamlin on Better Call Saul. Jeff I would say Jarvis, Jeff Jarvis, exactly. I was suddenly thinking of Jarvis from Iron Man. It's been a long day, but Jeff Jarvis, who wrote the Gutenberg parenthesis, actually something he said to me that just really continues to resonate, that there wasn't any innovation from the time the printing press was introduced until about 100 to 150 years, until the technology, to quote Jeff, became boring. Something to think about. Sometimes, actually, when we talk about speed, we move a little bit too quickly. Sometimes we need to slow down, see the wood for the trees, and wait for the technology to become boring to then start to innovate. I really love that. You know, every Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, I've been doing something called the Collective Cafe. It's virtual coffee. It takes place in Discord and now using Zoom as well for the normies, for the people that don't feel comfortable with Discord. And it really just has been, for me, a bit of a life-changing commitment and investment. By the way, if you want to join us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Eastern, just come to discord.gg/Alpha Collective. We manifest on Mondays, Thought Leadership Tuesdays, Wellness Wednesdays, live book reads on Thursdays, and on Friday, we kind of do no agenda open mic. Recently, we did a great session on this quote, which is capture the wind, no matter which way the wind is blowing. Something that actually says, you know, we always want, we talk about headwinds and tailwinds, right? We don't want the headwinds, we want the tailwinds. But the reality is in life, we're going to get both. So how do we deal with it? How do we actually capture and harness the energy of the wind? Because remember, wind is an incredible source of energy. And if you actually realize both good and bad, it can actually become really great. Well, that's a very interesting angle. Another thing on the live book read Thursdays, we've been reading a book called Happier, which actually was handed to me by the late Tony Shea. And it was part of Zappos' Open Happiness, their whole happy positioning. And it's really just been amazing. The question of questions, which is the pursuit of the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate happiness. Can we become happy almost on a regular long-term basis? That is the question of questions. And if you don't attend live or you can't attend live, you can subscribe to the podcast, bit.ly/collective cafe to go. And we would love to have you join us. But now it's time for the seated soliloquy. And as always, the seated soliloquy is connected to my guest. It is called today Response and Responsiveness. The first time that I ever heard these words was actually in my very first year here in the US in 1997. I was working at IBM and actually didn't hear these words. What I actually heard was the idea of offer and offering. So at the time with IBM and small and medium business, it was really about being able to say, what is the product and what is the offer? And I kind of like the idea of the word play, offer and offering. You need both. These two kind of work together, almost like a dynamic duo, like Batman and Robin. So what does response and responsiveness mean? Well, I actually tweaked this and came up with the phrase, most likely I would guess 2007, so about 10 years after that, when I wrote Join the Conversation. And this specifically was talking to businesses, to companies, to brands that were just too slow to react to their customers. Sometimes I would actually say that they needed to proact. You know, they needed to react proactively. Because sometimes you only can react when something happens, when a customer reaches out to you, when they have a complaint or a compliment, whether they love you, whether they hate you, whether something's going on that you could never have predicted. You have to react proactively. You have to proact. So what does it mean, response and responsiveness? Well, it's very, very simply a quality and a quantity 1-2 punch. How quickly do you respond? And how well do you respond? It struck me then, it strikes me now, that we're still just unacceptably, as companies, as brands, we're just taking too long. We need to outlaw the 24-hour autoresponder. We need to outlaw your call is important to us and will be answered in the order it was received. You're very important to us. You are number 7,455 in the queue. Unacceptable. And when you ask a company and a brand why it takes them so long, they tell you they don't have enough people, or hire more people, or get that fat cat sitting in the boardroom, that CEO, to spend a little bit more time, maybe on Twitter or X or social media, or, quite frankly, just even in the call center. If you want to be competitive in today's times, you need to be able to respond quickly and properly. Quality and quantity, 1-2 punch. And it takes a really brilliant man to actually remind us in 2023 why this is so important. And you know what? Jay and I were actually chatting a little bit earlier, and we were talking about the fact that, we're talking about my new book, and we're saying, why has no one written this book before? Well, why has no one written a book on speed? Why has no one written a book that actually reminds us that if we want to be competitive today, we've got to be able to nail response and responsiveness? And so it is absolutely my pleasure to welcome back. He knows, I think, and if he doesn't, he will know now, that 5 appearances on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous equals a smoking jacket. And Jay Baer is known for his jacket, so maybe he might have to design what that smoking jacket looks like. Jay Baer is a business growth and customer experience author, researcher, and advisor, a 7th-generation entrepreneur. Jay has written 7 best-selling business books and created 6 multi-million-dollar companies. Jay, I think you know that you need to create another multi-million-dollar company so that you can hit the 777. But here's another 7. He has consulted for more than 700 brands, including some startups that you may have heard of, Nike, Oracle, IBM, and the United Nations. An inductee into the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame, Jay was named this year as one of the world's top 30 global gurus in custom experience and in marketing. And in his spare time, he is the 2nd most popular tequila influencer and educator on the planet. I think the first question we all need to ask and answer is, who is the first? So, Jay Baer.
It is a common question that I get quite a bit. Nice to see you, my friend. I just want to point out that I am the 2nd most popular tequila educator, non-celebrity division. Okay, so it's not like Clooney and me, Kendall Jenner, me, The Rock and me, all of whom famously own tequila brands. It's some realtor in Los Angeles and me. But amongst mere mortals, I am the 2nd most popular tequila influencer and educator on the planet now. Always tequila, standing by. And that has been my side hustle. So obviously the pandemic changed a lot of things for a lot of people. One of the things it did for me was convince me to sell my consulting firm, which I had for many, many years. And I took some of the time that I clawed back from not having to run the consulting firm and decided to start making some videos to educate people about tequila and teach them some of the things that I've learned over the last 25 years. And sort of unbeknownst to me, or certainly not necessarily planned, it kind of became a thing. And now it's definitely a bit of a real business, actually.
So wait, you still didn't tell me who the number 1 is.
Yeah, it's a guy. He's a realtor in Los Angeles.
Oh, so this nondescript. It's not. It's not Kendall. And I think, by the way, if you just mention these celebrity names enough in association with you, it will stick. Just like
it is Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. Tequila division is exactly the same strategy.
We're going to talk about tequila in a moment because I'm kind of fascinated, and I'm kind of grumpy as well, because my whole friendship circle, everyone seems to be moving from single malt Scotch to tequila, and I'm resisting as strongly as I can.
I can fix that.
I'm sure. Don't they call it sampling?
Exactly.
So, that's the 5 o'clock somewhere. But we have a new game that we play here. Started a few weeks ago. Are you ready? Are you willing? And are you able to play 2 truths and a lie?
I'm at least 2 of those 3. Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
2 truths and a lie. Can you guess which is which?
We got a theme song here.
That's great.
Tune and lean and don't you dare miss a pitch. It's Joseph Jaffe, not famous, but you'll see.
all created by AI and
We twist, we turn in search of reality.
I find it kind of fascinating that this is all created by AI.
It's amazing. It's great.
But you, Jay, are the real deal, my friend. And
So
we don't know which of these are true. We don't know which of these are a lie. But if you have an idea, all you have to do is go to bit.ly/2T1L_Jay Baer and vote. And who knows, you might just win a bottle of tequila or 10%.
I can make that happen.
Yeah, I'm sure. Or 10% off those beautiful agave mugs as well. So, Jay, I have no idea personally which one is true and which two are true, which is a lie, which is a lie in of itself. But the first that we found out, which is very interesting, is that apparently you worked on a political campaign for a US president. This was not to re-elect Kevin McCarthy or anything like that.
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. You don't look a day under 200. So tell us what it was like to work on a political campaign for a U.S. president.
I was a political science major in university, and so that was going to be my actual career trajectory. I started off in politics, and I was a direct mail specialist initially, and then I became a digital marketing specialist, and yes, worked on a United States presidential campaign. Should I tell you which one? Is that part of the game?
Well, look, I don't know whether it's real or not, so you can make up one. I'm pretty.
Oh,
sure.
okay. That I will tell you. I will tell you that both my wife and I worked for the late U.S. Senator John McCain when he ran for president.
Amazing. So you were actually working on the digital side.
Yeah. So I actually did all of Senator McCain's direct mail when he was in the Senate before he ran for president, and then when he ran for president, I did website, digital fundraising, email strategy, all those kind of things.
So here's a question actually related to, I mean, you and I as digital OGs and social OGs and whatever names people want to sling at us, we've seen from Howard Dean through Barack Obama through, quite frankly, Donald Trump, when we're talking about a common thread of innovation in tech, use of Twitter, micro targeting with data, etc. We've seen a certain amount of innovation. Where is it heading now? I think there's an ugly and a bad, which is deep faking and AI.
Yeah.
But what do you think we're going to see moving forward, both good, bad, and I suppose ugly?
I mean, certainly you are exactly right. The part that scares me the most is the inability to validate accuracy in whatever it is that you're watching or listening to. That, I think, has some manifest problematic consequences. On the positive side, the ability to put a message out there or to even ask for funding, etc., and then close the loop on that literally within minutes or hours is extraordinary. And as a lapsed campaign manager in politics, I can't imagine how exhilarating and beneficial it would be to say, hey, let's send an email to our list, and we just raked $10 million overnight. So that moving forward is going to be even more of an opportunity. And I would argue that we're going to start to see, although Trump's foray into this was fairly ill-fated, but I do think we'll see a lot more use of smart contracts, NFTs, sort of be inside the inside circle of this candidate, that kind of tiered access. There's a lot of room to move there yet.
I really love that. I hadn't actually thought about that. I hadn't thought about this idea of community VIP access. We've seen it's such a no-brainer when you actually mention it now, because we've seen that, for example, going to an event and doing a meet and greet before and having a photo op after. And so the ability to grant that access and token gate it makes total sense. The fundraising as well, also really, really amazing. If you are, and I know you're going to say something, but like before, because I love how you're also tying it to the book. But what you're talking about is not even necessarily responding to people. You're saying being able to respond to anything going on in the news, in the world, and fundraise. Look, I mean, good, bad, or ugly, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and that genie's not going back in the bottle. But this idea, VCon was in Indianapolis, which is not too far from me, not long ago, and that whole idea that in order to go to the conference you have to be an NFT holder, etc. I did find it really fascinating. My very first job in politics, I was a freshman in college. It was the summer after my freshman year, and I was an intern at a public affairs firm. And our largest client at that time was United States Congressman John Kyle, who ended up becoming a United States senator and a very prominent senator at that. But Congressman Kyle at that time had a thing called the John Kyle Coffee Cup Club, which is an alliterative nightmare. But the John Kyle Coffee Cup Club was a once a month Wednesday morning confab where if you purchased a coffee mug that said John Kyle on it for, I think it was $50 at the time, but it's this is a long time ago. And if you bought the coffee mug, then you were allowed to come and have coffee with the congressman once a month and ask questions. And I think, well, that's no different than buying an NFT and having access to the inner circle, and there's an inaugural ball or some kind of ongoing event with your representative. It's the same idea, just very, 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 very offline.
Super interesting. And then I think it was John Kyle also, whose claim to fame was being quite outspoken and active in terms of trying to shut down online gaming, if that's the same Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, John Kyle's wife yelled at me more than any other client in my entire life. So we've got that. I've got that memory and scar to remind me of my early days.
We might not need to add it to, was that 2 truths and 2 lies or 3 truths and 1 lie?
Exactly.
We don't know, but here is another interesting fact, is that apparently you are the domain king, or the king of beers, or how about the king of domains? You were the first registrant of the domain name Budweiser.com. And I'm assuming, unless Elon Musk took it away from you, that you are now a billionaire sitting on this, after selling this domain to Budweiser.
No. My partners and I, in my very first internet company, circa 1993. So after I got out of politics, I got into the web very early. It was in the days, and you remember these, when domain names were free, right? You didn't have to pay for domain names. You could just get whatever you wanted because nobody had a website at that point. There was no point of doing it. So we sold Budweiser.com to Anheuser-Busch for 50 cases of beer. And in the contract written by an actual professional attorney, it stipulated bottles, not cans, because you got to keep it classy.
There you go. I was like, I was on the ledge about to jump, but the fact that it was bottles, not cans, brought it back as well. Dylan Mulvaney would have preferred, I think, the bottles as opposed to the cans. And it was Budweiser, not Bud Light. So there is
I would have to check the facts on this, but was Bud Light even invented in 1993?
That is,
I will have to ask a database.
You could, if only there was some kind of a search engine or AI
if only.
product.
But that is actually the point. In those days, there was not. Right? If you had a question like, when was Budweiser invented, you would have to go to the friggin' library. You would have to drive downtown, meet with a reference librarian who would help you find a book, and you would look it up, and you probably would not be able to discover that answer because it is very random. And so you know what we did back then? You remember these days. You know what we did back then? We would just say, I guess this information is unknowable. And we were totally okay with that. Life was simpler then.
Oh, you know what? I mean, I feel like there's a riff on that. The idea of being comfortable with the unknowable, right?
There's something, I actually talked about that in the new book a little bit.
There's something really beautiful about the fact. I mean, again, it's the pursuit of perfection, this ability to have to live in perfect information and not to be okay and just comfortable with saying, I don't know, I guess, maybe here's a range. It doesn't have to be, it's interesting. There's an anxiety about always having to be perfect.
There's a reason why ignorance is bliss is a popular saying. It's not an accident.
Indeed. Maybe we need to, well, I mean, I've lived my whole life being an ignoramus, so, can't be a bad thing. All right, so we've heard two interesting little updates about you.
Yes.
But here's something that I did not know, that you are apparently a past winner of the US Juggling Championship. This seems so insane that on one hand, it can only be, in my opinion, real, because it seems too insane not to be real.
Too bizarre to be true.
And then I think of you, on stage as a master of ceremonies. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, is there anything you can't do, Jay?
There are many, many things I can't do. I can't sing, number one, at all. I am not a particularly good player of billiards. I'm not a very kind father. There's a lot of things I'm not great at, but juggling is one thing I have absolutely mastered. And I will say, just sort of like my comment about my tequila business, there are jugglers, and then there are jugglers. Okay. So in the juggling community, there's sort of two paths you can take. You either become a juggler that adds objects, right? So you go from 3 to 5 to 7 to 9, and the difficulty, of course, increases geometrically as you add different objects. But in that sort of path, you're typically juggling the same thing. It's just more of the same thing, right? So it's 9 eggs, it's 9 rutabagas, it's 9 bicycle tires. The other path in the juggling world is mixed objects, right? So what you've got, a chainsaw and a bowling ball and an apple. You've probably seen routines like that. I very much was trained in the former school, right? Where you juggle many of the same kind of object. I preferred sort of the apple orange size, which is actually, it is the easiest because it's the easiest to fit in your hand. You can still hold it. It's not so small that you got to really grab it, and it's not so big where the weight becomes tricky. So yes, at one point quite accomplished, but that's been quite a while. And there are many, 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 many people who are better at juggling than I am now.
The next time you see Jay Baer on stage, make sure that you ask him to do a little bit of a juggling act. And if you think you can identify the lie out of the 3, I'm so confused that I thought I knew what it was before. Again, I'm lying right now. Just go to the URL that you see below and vote. And you know what? Again, you may just win something special from either Jay or myself or both of us or neither of us. But you'll have a little bit of fun in the process. All right, Mr. Juggler, enough about these shenanigans. Before we get to the book, I just want to go back to something you said at the beginning, which was, I mean, it's very real to me now, talking about March 2020, or as I called it in the book. In fact, as I talk about in the book, this is very meta right now, which is I mentioned that I had to change the name of the show, and I had to stop mentioning certain words on the show because I ended up getting shadow banned and struggled to be able to even promote the show. And so I used to refer to the global Patricia. And as I wrote in the book, maybe I should have called it the global Karen. But the reality is that stuff happened in March 2020. Some of us changed forever. Some of us became forever changed, and some of us didn't at all. What about you? You mentioned that you sold your business, but how have you changed, if at all, Jay?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I came to the conclusion, it's one of the reasons I sold the company. I didn't want to be frantically busy at all times, and I didn't realize that I was. It was only when the pandemic came, the Patricia came, and I stopped traveling as a professional speaker, that I realized, like, oh, I've actually been kind of unhappy about having to travel this much and run a global consulting firm. And that realization really kind of shook me up. And so that's why I decided to get out of the consulting side of the business. I miss the people terribly. I miss the clients. I miss the work, but I don't miss the workload. And my observation sort of coming out of those days was that it made all of us reassess what we care about and why. And that became the kernel of the idea, which became the new book, The Time to Win. The thesis was that we care about our time and how we spend it more than ever. As always, when I create a new book, I always validate the premise with deep proprietary first party research. And so I thought, well, if I care about time more than ever, and I think everybody else cares about time more than ever, that has manifest implications for business. But I want to make sure that's true before I start telling people that this is the case. So I did a research report, also called The Time to Win, which was the most comprehensive research ever conducted on the relationship between responsiveness and revenue. And it turns out that indeed we do care about our time and how we spend it more than ever. The pandemic sort of reminded us of a simple truth, an important truth, but an often overlooked truth, which is that each and every one of us has and will always only have 1,440 minutes a day. And what you do with that time really, really matters. You can't make more, you can't buy more. I think, and I'd love to get your take on this, my friend, I believe that time is the only resource on this planet that we actually share equally. And you can use that fact as a distinct competitive advantage if you choose to do so.
Well, first of all, I was going to say, a la Rent, 1,440 minutes.
Well done. That was nice.
Well, you know what? There are apparently 3 things that you need to work on now with more time on your hands. 1 is billiards. 2 is singing, which I don't know if there's anything to help you there. And 3 is becoming less of a mean father, which I do not believe is true for 1 second. I'm thinking about that. That is a bold statement, that it is the great equalizer. Because you want to know my take, and the first thing I think of is there has been a series of empty and false promises about leveling of playing fields. And digital was going to level the playing fields, and social was going to level the playing fields, and Web3 was going to level the playing fields. And what we see is the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, the Matthews effect. Our friend Mark Schaefer speaks about that as well. And what you're saying is at the end of the day, every human being, if you give you 10 minutes and me 10 minutes, we are potentially capable of coming up with an idea that could change the world. We are on a level playing field, perhaps, when a minute is a minute, when 10 minutes is 10 minutes, an hour is an hour. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And we no longer tolerate, the way we once did, organizations or businesses wasting our time. What I mentioned in the book is that if you give your customers time, they will give you money. If you cost your customers time, it will cost you money. In the research, we found that 2/3 of customers, 2 in 3, say that speed is now as important as price. That's astonishing. They're making decisions based on how fast you are and how fast they can get satiated, as opposed to what it actually costs. That only happens in a world where you value your time more than ever. Now, I'm not suggesting that businesses aren't cognizant of speed and responsiveness. They are. What I am suggesting is that what smart businesses will do is elevate speed and responsiveness on their internal list of priorities because their customers have already done so. 50%, half of all customers, will hire whomever contacts them first in a competitive scenario, regardless of price. Half. So if you know that to be true, why don't you just engineer your business so that you are always the first to respond? You probably should.
Look, there are a couple of points that I think are potentially billion-dollar ideas for people that are watching that can incorporate this. Just make sure that you send the tip to Jay Baer or buy some tequila glasses. The first, and this actually speaks to me because I never proved it. Maybe one day we can prove it together. But when I wrote Flip the Funnel, talking about the relationship between referrals and revenue, what you've done is you've actually drawn a nice, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line between, in this case, speed and well, you call it responsiveness and revenue. And it makes total sense. I guess the next point, which to me, this is the aha moment, is to see which company is first, again, from a speed to market, to actually start to build market position and differentiate themselves on the
it's already
basis
happening.
of speed.
I'll give you an example. It's already happening. Do you know the company Lemonade?
Yes, insurance, right?
Yeah, they're primarily renters insurance. That's their stock and trade, but they have other insurance types as well. They are the highest rated rental insurance provider out of some 200 companies. 97% customer sat rating, net promoter score through the roof, highest revenue per employee in the industry, like every conceivable metric. And it's because they were built to exceed customers' need for speed from the ground up. This is an actual example. I didn't conjure this. This is real. So this guy, Paul, lives in New York City. He's got one of those fancy Canada Goose kind of full-length parkas. It was $979 jacket. Whether or not that's a good investment or not is a topic for another show. He goes to a bar in Manhattan. Someone steals his jacket. Oh, man. So he goes on his phone. He has the Lemonade app on his phone. Okay, dials up the app, makes a 25-second video. Hi, it's Paul. I have this jacket. It was $979. I took it to the bar and I lost it. Submit. 25-second video. At that point, Lemonade runs a series of fraud detection algorithms based on the video itself using AI to detect instances of perhaps bogusness. They check kind of Paul's account history. Is there an actual jacket that's approximately this amount of money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is handled with AI. The claim is analyzed. Then the appropriate money is actually wired to Paul's bank account, which they have on file, minus his $250 deductible. So he gets $729 put in his account, and the entire process and the case is closed out. 25-second video, 3-second processing time. 3 seconds to process his claim and get the money. 3 seconds. Now, if you're a legacy insurance company, what do you do about that? That's the question, right? Ultimately,
I think we should just let it sit there with about 3 seconds of silence.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Schaefer will say that the most human company wins. I believe that to be largely accurate. But when you value your time more than anything else, as I said, 2/3 of people value their time as much as they value money. In that world, the fastest company wins eventually, right? Now, I will say, however, this is an important point. I don't want your audience, my friend, to take from this conversation or the book that what Jay says is you should just be as fast as possible all the time. You should probably be faster than you are much of the time. And the data is very clear on that. But this isn't about just breakneck speed for no reason, because quite literally, speed at all costs actually costs your business. You can be too fast. There's a circumstance where you're too fast. I learned this myself the hard way. I went to a Mexican food restaurant here in Indiana, which is a questionable decision because we are not the home of authentic Latino cuisine here in the Midwest. But I went anyway. And I ordered chicken enchiladas, and they brought me enchiladas, I'm not kidding, in 90 seconds. It was astonishingly fast. And I looked at those enchiladas, and I just shook my head. I was like, do they have an enchilada machine? Like, this is not right. I distrusted the enchiladas because they were so fast. And the same thing can happen in your business. You don't want to go to the fastest tattoo artist in Connecticut, for example. Even a company like Drift, right? So Drift is a maker of chatbots, mostly for B2B. Drift programs in an intentional 3-second delay when you ask a question of the chatbot, because if they respond instantly, because they can, because it's AI, people don't trust the response. So they fake delay it. So you're like, oh yeah, this robot really thought about the answer. So the key principle here is not necessarily just to be as fast as you can. The key principle is to, in your business, figure out and then implement what is the right now for your business. The right now is the perfect amount of elapsed time in every customer interaction. The right now. It's not too slow, definitely, but it's also not too fast. It's right in the middle. And you have to figure out what that is for your business because it's different for every business.
I love that. I was jotting down a few things. I wrote down strategic speed, and I wrote down speed with purpose, or maybe speed on purpose. But I also did a bit of digging, and I think unless you're this tattoo artist who broke the world record by making 448 tattoos in 22 hours, but I created something else for you. You're welcome. And this is
That's it. That's it.
I created this. This is an original thanks to AI.
I love it.
You know, good, fast, or cheap. Pick two.
Pick two. Right. That's it.
Right.
That's what happens when you.
I will be sending you. I will be sending you this image with
that will show up in a keynote as early as tomorrow. I love it.
Thank you very much. Just just send the residuals.
Exactly.
To I don't know, Zuckerberg or something like that. But I love it, and as always, there has never been a time that I've seen you in action, and I mean this, where you've always come up with a story or an anecdote that has stuck with me. That whole concept of sticking today, and that I've taken with you. I think you might have been the originator. You may or may not have been. You were either the originator of sit or squat or run pee. One of them is your stories.
I actually have talked about both of them in two different books, so I don't know which one or both. But yeah, I talked about both of those, and they're both brilliant, right? Both from a customer care perspective and certainly a word of mouth perspective. Yeah, I wish Run P was still around. That was a great idea.
And somehow both have got to do with peeing as well. Sticking and peeing. There's definitely
universally applicable.
Common threads. Now you came up with a framework because again, as consultants, thought leaders, etc., we're paid by the acronym framework or matrix. And so this is called the Time to Win framework. There are six of these pieces, and I just wanted to. There were a couple of things that I absolutely loved, or let's just say intrigued me. Let's start off with respond without answers. What does that mean?
So this one actually is very helpful, not just in your business, but actually in your day-to-day life. I've been pursuing this idea now for about 2.5 years, and it's had a big impact on me with my family, with my friends, with my mailman, certainly with my business, etc. So the idea of responding without answers works like this. Generally speaking, today, if somebody asks you a question and you don't immediately know the answer, you go procure whatever is necessary to provide that reply. You have to look it up. You've got to ask Susan in accounting. You've got to wait for this guy to get back from vacation. Whatever has to happen for you to conjure the info, you do that, and then you say, here's the response. Don't do that anymore. Don't do that. Because the whole time that you're looking it up, asking the person in accounting, the individual who asked you the question is slowly freaking out. Now, I know this to be true because if you send somebody an email now and you don't hear back for 2 days, you start playing this game. I sent Joseph Jaffe an email. I didn't hear anything back. Do I have his email address wrong? Did my email to Joseph go to spam for some reason? Is he on vacation but just didn't set out of office? Is he mad at me for some reason? Should I follow up this email now with a phone call? Or does that make me seem sad and desperate? You start to play all these games. So instead, what you should do is if somebody asks you anything, if you don't immediately know the answer, you just reply instantly and you say, good question. So good, in fact, I've got to look it up. I'm going to go do that, and then I'll be back at you. Now, does this mean you've got to respond to everybody twice? It does. But the first response is just, I got it. And the second that you say, I got it, it transfers this issue from the persons who's asking the question from their to-do list, and they put it on your to-do list. And that is a incredibly important psychological shift that does two things. One, it massively increases their perception of your responsiveness and speed. And two, it actually buys you more time to provide the actual answer. Use this in your whole life. You're going to love it.
So I've updated that too. Number one is got it. Number two is on it.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, companies do the first one actually really well with automation and autoresponders, you know, acknowledging that your form was submitted. But they do an unbelievably lousy job of the on it part, don't they?
Yes, because the automation is so automated that we no longer trust it. Right? It's you know that this was mechanically generated because it's so ham-handed and poorly rendered that you don't there's no veracity in that for the individual, right? So it wouldn't be a hard change to make that feel more personal and believable. But for some reason, we just think that a standard, yes, your form was submitted, is going to satiate your uncertainty about whether anybody is ever going to get back to you.
You do realize that you've just coined the phrase automating automation or automated automation.
Exactly. It's true.
And then look, the corollary of that is humanized automation, which is that drift example with a 3-second delay.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? This idea that any interaction between a business and a customer prospect is either human or automated is a really false choice. So you can have human interactions that are powered by automation, and you can have automated interactions that take on of a human interaction. You just have to think about it's not one or the other. It's a false choice, right? So you want a little of both across the board, in my estimation.
It makes me think as well of now when you call these what do you call it, IVR, these call centers, and you hear this
the fake keyboard,
they're trying to do what you're suggesting, but they're just not doing it in a very
I just listened to that this morning. Actually, I had to talk to my phone company, and it's just a really lousy sound clip. Like, it doesn't sound, that's not how a keyboard sounds. I think that's part of the problem. Like, the idea is actually not bad. It's just like, execute on this idea a little better.
They need my keyboard. They need my Rodecaster.
Exactly.
As well.
I mean, if you're a $1 billion company, hire a sound engineer, get a Foley artist for something.
So like what they need is they need something that goes like, Joan, we got a question.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
From accounting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be great. So you really should try to adopt this respond without answers approach. You'll be amazed at what an impact it has.
All right. Well, let's jump to almost like the sibling of the idea of respond without answers to answer before they ask.
So this one is will be familiar to you because you've seen my work in the past and some of our colleagues as well. The fastest you can possibly be is when you provide what the customer needs before they have to ask you for it, right? Predictive generation of value is the highest possible level of this kind of approach. I was in Scottsdale not long ago doing a presentation, and I had the afternoon off. So I was at the pool, and I'm just hanging out by the pool, minding my own business, on my Kindle. And the pool staff person comes up to me and says, here's a strawberry daiquiri, Mr. Baer. You were giving off strawberry daiquiri vibes. I was like, you're right. I was giving off strawberry daiquiri vibes. Like, you're some kind of a genius, right? That kind of predictive service is a magic trick. And you can and should try to do that in your own business. For example, there's a guy, Glenn Gorab. He's a doctor, oral surgeon specifically. And every Friday, he calls the people who are coming in the next week. And he says, hey, this is Glenn. I'm your oral surgeon. I understand you're coming in next week for the first time. Before you get here, do you have any questions that I can answer? If you're going in for oral surgeon work, you have questions. But instead of making his patients carry that anxiety with them, like in some kind of psychological backpack until they actually get to the office, he volunteers to address those questions days before they ever set foot in the office, which has a huge impact on loyalty, on customer psychology, on perception of responsiveness. If you know what your customers need, and you do, why do we make them work so hard to get it? One of the exercises I often have people do when I'm doing presentations, I say, write down the 25, right now, top of your head, write down the 25 questions that your customers have most often about your business. Everybody can do it. And then I say, cool, of those 25, how many can they answer or get answered without talking to anybody in your organization through phone, email, chat, any mechanism? And it's usually 6 out of 25. I'm like, what about the other 19? You just told me that you know for a fact that people need this information, yet you require them to request it of you. What the hell are we doing here?
I love this. What was his name? Glenn Goreb.
Glenn Goreb. Yep.
And I'm imagining when he reaches out to these patients, that the questions they come back with are not, does anyone know when Bud Light was invented?
Right.
You know,
yeah,
sorry,
it's like, what's, yeah, it's like, is this going to hurt? Yeah. Is this going to hurt if I get surgery? Right. I think the questions are fairly well established for him.
He's like, you know what? I've never been asked that question before. Is it going to hurt? Actually, you could respond that way with a little bit of personality, and that would disarm the person. You know,
Bud Light was invented in 1982. I just looked it up. So in fact, it did exist at that point.
You know, it's it brings me back to one of the great quotes, which is marketing, and you can insert customer service, anything. Marketing is common sense, but how many of us have common sense? This is why the book is so timely right now to speak about speed, because the world has changed radically in the last 3+ years. And patience and frustration. I mean, now we have, as we said, we don't have road rage anymore. We have, we have flight rage and plane rage. We're just
time rage.
Yeah, time rage. Did you just coin that, or have you been?
I just coined that, but I do like it very much. And
TM. I've just TM'd it for you.
83% of customers expect businesses to be as fast or faster than they were before the pandemic. So this idea that you can, we try to be pretty fast. We're fast enough. No, you're not, because customer expectations around speed never go backwards, right? I've been doing this a long time, and I've never heard a customer say, you know what, next time, why don't you guys do that more slowly?
Yeah.
Those words have never been uttered. So your responsiveness as a company is not a fixed indices, right? It has to continue to get better. You're never done with this approach. Now, look, I understand what I'm saying is difficult in practice for some people, right? Because they say, well, Jay, if we focus on being faster, then quality is going to go down, or we don't have the people to do this. I understand all that. And that's a choice you have to make. What I'm telling you is your customers have already elevated speed on their list of priorities. And if you do the same, if you focus on getting faster, this is the time to win, which is why the book is called that. You have a distinct window of opportunity. I think it's about 2 years to use speed as a distinct competitive advantage. But in 2 years, or probably 3 years, this whole conversation is going to be pointless. We're going to have to delete this from the archives, because every business will do all the things I talked about in this book. Everything I recommend will be done by everybody.
Well, at least the ones that are still in business.
Because their customers will demand it. You're not going to have a choice. You're going to have to do all the things I recommend. My suggestion, though, is that you do it sooner rather than later, because your competition won't. And if you do it sooner and they do it later, that delta in between when you do it and they do it, that is very ripe for the picking.
Jay, I would be breaking my contract with your with the agents that negotiated your appearance today. If I did not discuss tequila,
can do.
And the quote of the episode today is, "Stop trying to make everyone happy. You're not tequila." And that was by the great philosopher Emmy Rossum.
It's a good one.
But you know, so just there is no question that you have been, since I've known you, you love your tequila. Tell us about your latest venture, my friend.
Yeah, and it really is it really has taken off. So it's Tequila Jay Baer on Instagram, tequila.j on TikTok. I create 5 videos every single week on tequila advice and tequila reviews. And now we have hundreds of thousands of followers and brand sponsors and private tastings and events and merchandise. The whole thing. It's actually a real business. It's a lot of fun, and I take a lot of pride in it, not just because people send me free tequila, but that's great. What guides my work in that area, Joseph, is a quote from my good friend Rory Vaden, who was an extraordinary personal branding strategist and friend. Rory has a saying which goes like this: your ideal audience is the person that you used to be. And there was a time when I didn't know anything about tequila. It was a while ago, but that day existed. And so when I'm creating content for my audience, I try to remember what it felt like to be that person and create content that answers questions that people want to have answered, right? Like, should I put ice in my tequila is one that we're publishing Monday, I think, right? You know, it's just, there's a lot of opportunity to be the FAQ for whatever industry. And if you're going to pick one, tequila is not a bad one to be in.
I want you to just give that to me again. Your ideal audience
is the person that you used to be.
So I'm going to just meditate on that. it's still so profound. Your ideal, just explain it to me again. Because as you were saying it and I was trying to pull up your beautiful...
One of the problems I think we all have is the curse of knowledge, right? So, you know, once you get into some sort of topic of expertise, you tend to want to create content for people like you who are nerds, who are experts, because that's where you are. But the much larger audience and the much more appreciative audience, and frankly, the more monetizable audience, are the people who are new to whatever topic it is that you're interested in. So there's a lot of people out there who create content for tequila nerds. There's fewer people like me who create content for novice and intermediate tequila fans. To me, that's more fun. And it's certainly a larger group of people to potentially serve.
I find a lot of solace in that statement now that I reflect on it, because I also think about, as an innovator and a thought leader, oftentimes we are a little bit too far ahead of the pack. And I think what this allows us to do is still maintain, again, it comes back to speed and balance, allows us to still explore and navigate and be first and adapt. But then at the same time, we still have the ability to come back and now kind of treat those early adopters and early majority, etc. I love it. Mr. Jay Baer, we are almost out of time. I am going to flash a couple of things on the screen for people. Most notably, if you want to check out Jay's Tequila Education Business, Instagram.com/Tequila Jay Baer and tequilajaybaer.com. Please go and buy The Time to Win at thetimetoWin.com.
Please do.
And also on Amazon. You can connect with him on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram. Jay, you're gonna, normally we play out with Chuck Norris, but we're gonna do that, and then I'm gonna show a nice little sizzle reel associated with your Time to Win keynote. But in the last 30 seconds, tell people one thing that's interesting about the book. The book is a short book. Why?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the book is literally 60 pages. You can read this book in under an hour for sure, maybe under half an hour. I sat down to write this book, and I've written 6 full-length business books, as you know. And I said, I can't make people spend 5 or 6 hours reading a book about speed. That's the exact opposite of the advice that I'm trying to have in these pages. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a very short book that people can read in under an hour, that they can put into their shirt pocket and take with them. Look, the reality is, I'm not ashamed to admit it, most people don't read business books. They skim them because it's the same idea written 7 or 8 times in a row. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, here's the meat of the sandwich, and that's all there is in the book, and you'll love it. That's why the book's only $9, and people love it so far.
I would have written a shorter book, but I didn't have the time.
So true.
Jay Baer?
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you, my friend. I'm waiting for my smoking jacket.
You are. It's coming. Let me tell you, and it is going to look as tartanish as you look today. Take care, everyone, and we will play out with a little bit of Jay Baer.
The pandemic created a lot of changes, but perhaps most of all, it changed our relationship with time. All the trends we're seeing right now, like the Great Resignation and work from home and leisure travel, they're all driven by one trend. We care more about time and how we use it. This has huge implications for every person in every business. Today, when something takes longer than we think it should, it feels like our time is being stolen. And when interacting with a business is faster than we thought it would be, it feels like we want a prize of time. I recently completed a comprehensive national study of consumer patience and business responsiveness. This is proprietary research, which is the deepest dive ever performed by anyone on the relationship between speed, customer loyalty, and revenue. In my new keynote presentation, The Time to Win, we learn why and how speed can be used as a massive business advantage. But it's not always about being as fast as possible. You don't, for example, want to use the fastest tattoo artist. Too much speed actually reduces trust. So what you want in your business, regardless of industry, is the right now. The right now is the perfect amount of elapsed time in every customer interaction. It optimizes the customer experience while also maximizing trust. Now, the right now varies for every business, but in this dynamic, funny, massively modern keynote presentation, I teach how to discover your right now and how to lead with speed. Speed is the number one most important component of customer experience and therefore of business success. Yet nobody is talking about it except me. This is
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.